Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's David Palmer, the Leo King, and I am so glad to be with you today talking about Deep Astrology, my show where I go deep into the astrology, look and see what's going on through this week, and really try and understand what's going on in the cosmos, because there's so much going on, and especially it just feels like every week that goes by, there's always just something new and something more intense, and oh man, do we ever get a break? Well, tonight we're going to talk about this week. Saturn goes retrograde, actually on the day that we're talking, Tuesday, April 17th, which is in Capricorn, the natural home for Saturn, which is the taskmaster, the worker. I like to call him the slave driver, and he's finally going to take a break and go retrograde. So we're going to talk about how this can actually be some breathing air for things in people's lives finally. And then Chiron moved into Aries today, the first time since it's reached the first degree of Aries in about 50 years, literally. Last time Chiron was in Aries, when it started at least, was 50 years ago. But Chiron actually is in Aries usually longer than most of the other signs. We're going to talk about that today as well. And then of course all this Venus-Jupiter stuff, Venus-Pluto. A lot of Venus activity going on as well. So I actually want to say just in those transits to talk about before we go into the charts and really dissect things, this week really is a lot about feeling better. I know that it might sound like a crazy thing out of the whole world when people think, oh, there's no way I can feel better in my life right now. Yeah, actually you can. And this week is really about turning the pages and feeling better and figuring things out and getting things, I don't want to say back on track, but inside of ourselves, dealing with a lot of subconscious energy of feeling like things are at a loss and realizing maybe they're not at a loss, rearranging things in our relationships, in our values, in our projects that suit our needs more and that could actually manifest more. This is also going to be a time for us with Saturn retrograde to it kind of is kind of like a conservative cutting taxes or cutting things out of the budget. You know, it's like, okay, what things in our life do we need to cut out of our lives in order for us to sustain and continue on the path that is going to bring us what we need in our life? So there's a lot to talk about in those areas. The Sun and Uranus are meeting this week. Gosh, I mean, it's like, you know, when I look at all the astrology this week and, you know, knowing this all in my head, it just blows my mind. Like, I'm just like, just each transit I've talked to you about is major. So when you just keep having a major transit this week, this is a very big week. And we're going to talk about how the Sun in Uranus is trying to lift us to a new place in the world, lift us into the heavens, at least try to. Then the Sun comes into Taurus this week. So there's that much happening too. Just the Sun moving into different signs is a big thing, and that's happening in the middle of this week as well. Not only that, there's another planet going retrograde this week. Pluto is going retrograde this week. So there's so much going on. And I really feel, honestly, when I think about all this and I look at all this and I look at what we've been going through, especially through that Mercury retrograde in the last 3 weeks, it's almost like, gee, mini Christmas. I think we all thought we were going to slide off a hill and die. I mean, literally, when Mercury is retrograde looking at Chiron, as Chiron's at the last degrees of Pisces, that's the best way I could ever, in my life, I've never seen that in astrology before, and I've been playing with charts for a long time. I've never seen that aspect happen, and it happened. And I think a lot of us were really looking at thinking we were going to fall off a cliff or something. And the truth is, we're not. This week is realizing that we're not. It's kind of like in Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade when, you know, Sean Connery thinks his son falls off the cliff with the tank and he's looking over and he's like, oh my gosh, I guess I never got to say goodbye to him. The truth is he's climbing right up and we're fine. Everything's okay. The big thing about this week is that everything is okay. Everything is maybe okay, but what are we willing to change in our identities now? There's so much Aries, right? We're finishing Aries. We're finishing the Uranus and Sun aspect this week in Aries. This is a big one. We're finishing so much with our egos, with our identity, our desires, our wants, our needs. We also just finished a new moon this weekend, so we are in a really powerful new moving forward cycle, especially with Mercury out of retrograde, a new moon. There's been a lot that is saying, all right, let's kick back into gear here. But also at the same time, there's some other planets that are saying, I'm not going forward anymore, I'm stopping. And we're dealing with a couple of the malefics going backwards, Saturn and Pluto. So this definitely, to me, combined with the Venus aspects, is about feeling better, realizing you're not going to fall off a cliff, realizing that the world's not going to end, realizing that there are options in your life. You're not going to just like suffocate through the energies that you're going through, because I feel like Chiron at the last degrees of Pisces can feel like we're all suffocating or we're all just over things in our life, when really at the end of the day, you know, there always is a new dawn. There always is a new day. And I think that that's what's very important to pay attention to when we look at what's going on with this astrology right now. Of course, there's lots of other things to look at. When we pinpoint things and when we look at charts, there's so much always going on. But I think when you really look at these major transits happening, I mean, let's just take Chiron, for example, coming into Aries. I mean, you know, Chiron's on a 50-year cycle, but it's interesting, you know, it's like when it goes through Pisces and Aries, it really takes a long fucking time. I mean, it's just like, bleh, bleh. So for it to come out of Pisces is a huge relief, I think, for souls. I think because Chiron in Pisces definitely feels, you know, like, I think it does a lot of soul healing work. But now we got to work on our outer selves and our outer lives. And I think that there's a lot that keeps pushing more towards the outer. I think there's been so much over the last decade that has been about the inner, with Neptune moving into Pisces in 2011 and 12, with Chiron moving into this space at the same time. You know, it's like, also if you look at Saturn was in Scorpio during all those times when we went through Scorpio through the end of 2012 all the way through 2015. And then we had Jupiter right now, which is retrograding in Scorpio. We're getting, you know, through so much of these deep inner world transits. It's interesting to see things are really about the outer world now. In the outer world, we're like coming out of hibernation. We're coming out of our, you know, deeper inner work. And now it's really going to be like, can we make the outer world look like the way that we want our inner world? I think that's a big question that's popping up this week. Do we have the courage now to make adjustments in the character and the persona of who we are? Do we have that? Can we do that? We are going to look really deep into that this week as we look into the charts. I just want to say I'm going on tour in less than a month. So if you want to reach me on tour, go to leokingevents.com. I'm coming to a city near you. I also want to plug the United Astrology Conference. I will be there May 24th through the 29th of 2018. Don't miss out if you're in the Chicago area or you want to come to Chicago. And this isn't about me. This is about the whole astrology community at large. Pretty much every astrologer that you probably watch or see or read a book from is going to be there. And it's a week long, and we're all in one place. And it's not about the individual astrologer. It's about the collective. It's about all the astrologers there. And so I'm super excited to go there. I'm going to have a booth there, but I'm really going there to interview astrologers, talk with astrologers, meet other fans. I'll, of course, be doing a talk in Chicago. I rented my own space to do a Leo King event. I didn't want to do it at UAC, so it's going to be pretty cool, but I'm going to be supporting United Astrology Conference. Please go out and check it out. You can go to, I think, UAC, or you know what, I don't know what the exact webpage is, but look it up, United Astrology Conference. It's on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're also everywhere on the internet. You can sign up and register as well. So, without further ado, let's take a look at, see what's happening in the charts. Oh, the trusty old charts. All right. So we are going to be looking at the chart that I just ran literally right before I came here, which is for April 17th of 2018. That's what we're doing at today and what is going on in the astrology. Well, the big one has been this. Saturn getting ready to retrograde, okay? Still hasn't technically retrograded yet. It's retrograding in the next couple hours, but Saturn is retrograding at the same day that Chiron has entered into Aries. Now, this is a really big deal because one, the Sun and Uranus and Mercury are all in Aries as well as Chiron has now done its full ingress in here. And so this is a big identity question because Chiron wants to repair, fix wherever the sores, the healing aspect needs to happen, right? It's like, where do we need to bring the medical aid, right? You know, it's like, where's all this stuff got to be fixed? I mean, Uranus is a fixer. Chiron is a fixer. The sun illuminates things, so we're illuminating our individuality. And that individuality is happening at the same time that Saturn is starting to retrograde in Capricorn, while Mars and Pluto are getting closer in Capricorn. This is the three bad boys, and they're all in Capricorn. They're really trying to teach you very hardly to get on the path you know you should be on. Now, what is the path we should be on? Well, it's our destiny. It's the path that we feel that we want to reach our highest achievement, our highest marks, our highest goals, and grow up into. And these are big grow-up lessons. Saturn retrograde always brings us to a place where we've, reached a place where we might feel maxed out of work, but you know what, at the same token, it's like we have to grow up. I'm going to be honest with you all, okay? It's not easy to go through Saturn transits. Like, they teach us to grow, they teach us to mature. But when Saturn retrogrades, what it does is it brings you to a point to say, let me stop for a second and let me think. And how can I, it's almost like when you go up a trail, right? Sometimes you're going to run into a roadblock, like a tree. And you have to make a choice. Do I cut down the tree or do I go backwards and go around the tree? It's like when I remember always thinking as a kid, because I took road trips as a kid going everywhere. Whenever you go through all these states, you'll notice they used dynamite and blew out sides of mountains to put roads through. Saturn retrogrades are always moments where it's like, do we blow out the road here and push through, or do we go around? And I think in our lives, it's like we're at a major choice period. And that choice period is directed about our identity now, our definition of ourself. It's going to be interesting. Let's have some fun real quick, and we'll go into my Facebook. The reason why I want to go into my Facebook is because today I put up a really cool image of Jerry Lewis in the movie The Nutty Professor. And I talked about how Chiron has officially entered Aries. It's a little funky since Uranus is in the space still, and we just talked about that. There's this fixer, but it's the battle of identity. And who are you? And this battle hasn't ended. Sometimes we try and be someone we think is a better representation of who we are when we feel our true identity is hurt and not happy with itself. Like we become a different person, right? Like we put on a different mask. We put on like a persona, to kind of like not be who maybe we're happy with the results of who we are inside. And I think that's going to come up more than ever now. And if you look at these pictures, it's like, if you remember the Nutty Professor, the original one, not the Eddie Murphy one. The Eddie Murphy one was, he was a fat professor that needed to be thin. It was the original that he was a nerdy professor, a scientific nerd who had a really weird voice and wore his, he wore his bow tie, right? So it's like, hi, and he had his teeth all funky, and he his hair, he didn't wear cool clothes. And remember, this movie was made in the 60s. And then it was like, let me show the real cool me, right? Flashy colors, smoking a cigarette at the club. The guy that everybody wants to can sing and dance and, talk to the ladies. Because actually, if you remember in the movie, he loved the ladies, but he couldn't because he was a nutty professor. He was in love with one of his students who was super hot. So, where is it in your life now where you're going, oh, I want this life? Aries and Capricorn are life and definition of life. Right? Like the identification of the life in which we really want, especially as Jupiter's retrograding in Scorpio, right? It's like, okay, we know what's really deep down there, the life we want. Are you ready to experiment? Who's ready to experiment with me? Let's look at this chart because I really feel like the experimentation's about to go down. One, the sun and Uranus. Now that technically doesn't happen until Wednesday, but look at what's happening at the same time that this Chiron Saturn retrograde happens. The moon in Taurus, which is exalted, it feels good on Venus in its home sign. Now this is a very positive alignment. So this is a very, very clear indication that there's something very positive going on in the zodiac. But what's it doing? it's opposing Jupiter, and then it's trining Pluto. We have to make major changes in the things that we value and that we want. And I think a lot of it is also, this is digging deeper into our desires and our hungers even more. And especially with the opposition to Jupiter and our deeper Scorpionic nature, you know, are we willing to expand our life by being honest with ourselves that just some things don't deliver as much? But I think the Venus and Taurus aspect says, hey, like, this looks good, this looks right, this feels right, but deeper inside, really does it? There's a lot of, in both of these transits happening alongside with Chiron coming into Aries, along with Saturn retrograding in Capricorn. It's like the life we want and what it's projected to look at, is it emotionally there? It's almost like, you know, you could buy a brand new car and think it's everything that you wanted to be, and then get in it and drive it every day and go, this just doesn't feel right. That's what I thought I wanted. It looked the way that I want to. It looks great. Everybody says, what a nice car, but I don't feel it. I don't feel that's what I want. It's not the path in which I want to be on. And sometimes we have to do the crazy thing, because if you actually think about it, with Uranus now conjuncting the sun this week, in order to elevate to a higher level in our life of ourself, our persona, and this is the highest ever that the sun and Uranus have come together in Aries, because last year Uranus and the sun were not at 28 degrees. They were lower. I think they were at like 26. I would have to look in the ephemeris, but just from my own math in my head, Uranus didn't reach 28 until later on with the sun, and the sun didn't pass it at 28. So this is a big deal, because this is the highest we've ever had to reach, and Uranus is coming out of shadow period. So we have to make some crazy moves here to become the person we want to be, yet I think this Taurus energy is saying, oh, I don't know if I want to like disrupt things too much. Like, let me try and appreciate what I've got and try and make the best of it, right? Like, there's so much of us, especially, how Chiron in Aries is that? Let me try and make the best of what I'm lacking of in myself and the life that I want. Let me just try and make the best of it, which is a very good spiritual trait, don't get me wrong. Like, sitting in the DMV, make the best of it. But sitting in the DMV every fucking day in the line, no. There's no such thing as I'm going to make the best of that I have to sit through that every day. Being in a slavery world and being a slave every day, no. Making the best of that? Like, there comes a point, and I hate to say this, but Aries is the god of war. Why do you think March is named March? And why Aries is in March, even though we're in April? Because the god of war is because of March and Mars. March, Mars. And the ruler of Aries is Mars. And Mars is in exaltation right now, headed towards Pluto. Have you guys seen this in the chart? Let's actually move to the next day, and you guys will see. Let me show you. So when the sun conjuncts Uranus in Aries, the sign of war, on Wednesday, right? Sun, Uranus, and Aries. It's at the exact same time that Mars now is getting into conjunction with Pluto. So the war machine in our own selves and the world, it's getting primed. And it's hard because we have to fight. And I hate to say this as a spiritual person, but it's like, you have to fight for the life for what you want. You can't just settle. I think that there's been a lot of energy with Saturn, right? That's been stationary, with Mercury that just came out of retrograde and this new moon on Uranus. It's like we're looking at the world and we're seeing, okay, look at all these ways that we can make things work, fix. Remember the South Node's in Aquarius. Uranus wants to fix things and try and make everybody happy and make everything work and make everything a utopia. But in Aries, I think it realizes, it looks around and goes, I don't know about that. I don't know if I just should do this even though I don't want to. And that's the hard part. Is this just continually, week after week has been, especially for the last 2 months, of all this Aries energy, been like, okay, I want this, but then there's been all this Pisces that's been like, oh, well, let's wait. And then a Mercury retrograde in Aries, and then now Chiron has shown up. Oh, there's a lot of wounds and gaping holes in our feeling of identity. And those gaping holes were deep in our souls for a long time. Now they're in our outer world. And so when you have an outer world now that you need to start fixing, it's not easy, because especially in Aries, if somebody puts the wrong paint color on something, it's like, oh gosh, it's the wrong color. Are you the kind of person who goes, I'll just accept it the way it is. They messed up and I don't want to cause a ruckus, and I'll take it the way it is. Sure, I'll take yellow. I ordered blue, but I'll take yellow. Or are you the person who is not going to accept the world and the life that is being presented to you in such a way that isn't really making you happy? And go, no, actually, I don't like yellow. Actually, it is a mess up. Can you fix that for me? I'm not going to get mad. Sure, I'm upset I want it now, but I would rather have it done right. There's a major difference, and this is where you're going to see people right now in life. Settling for things in which they don't want, but it's a safer place to go. But the curiosity right now is going to hit all-time highs. The reason why is because at the exact time that the sun is going to conjunct Uranus, the moon will be in Gemini, which is exactly where the moon was when Mercury went retrograde last time, okay? So now Mercury's direct as the moon's in Gemini, and it's in its forward motion. So now it's almost like we're picking up the pieces for where we were feeling 3 weeks ago. And now we have ways to figure it out. Sun and Uranus, we have ways to figure it out. The other thing is this Venus trine Pluto. You know, it's almost like, okay, my hunger's here. I want this. This is what I want. And Mars is priming this up really big, right? All right, let's go for it. Let's take it. Let's go for the true meaning of what we want. And this is difficult because the curiosity of what if is out there, and settling is difficult if it's not truly in alignment with what we want. And this is where there's a lot of holes. Chiron. This is where there's a lot to heal from. And if you look at the chart, there's not like a lot of major crazy crap going on as far as like angles, okay? There's some great trines, there's some great conjunctions, and there's some big new ingresses with Chiron coming into Aries, and of course Saturn retrograde. And Jupiter is now moving away from Pluto, so, you know, this is going to force you to go, oh man, I need to start looking deeper into what if? What if I did this with my life? What is this doorway that I could walk through? How would that look? And needing to start looking at a deeper sense of, well, who do you want to be and what needs to be fixed in self? Instead of saying, how could I fix this identity that's not supplying me with what I want? It's very hard because the ego is something in which a lot of people have a hard time with, right? But the ego at the same time has a very primitive and basic role, which is identification. It keeps the car blue if it's blue. It keeps the car a Mercedes or a Jaguar because of its name on it. It's the name that which you were given when you were born that you write in the world. It also at the same time is the representation of what clothes you wear, whether you decide you like a tan or you want to be pasty white, or if you want to have dry skin. You know, there's so many things about identity and how you create yourself. I think it's going to be interesting with Chiron and Aries, because what it's going to do now is it's going to force like people to put on the mask in which they want to really be. Now, if that mask is really who they really are, that's a good question, which is why Chiron's going to go back into Pisces and see if the soul and the ego can align. And that's really what the question is in our lives now. Does your soul meet your outer world? And I'm going to pause on that for a sec. Because inside, if you're feeling a certain way, and your outside isn't fully replicating that, there's something fucking wrong. You know, it's like, yeah, there's something wrong. Like, it's like learning to align soul and identity together as one. Because there's nothing worse than a soul wearing an identity or wearing, like imagine if you were to go to a fucking coat check at a bar or a club or an event, and they gave you somebody else's jacket. And you put it on and it doesn't fit and it's not a brand you like and it smells funny. That's what we're going through. Why do you keep wearing the jacket that you don't want to wear? Chiron has finally showed up in Aries. Do you have the balls or the ovaries to take that jacket off? You can't just put another jacket on top of a shitty jacket. It gets too hot. And I think that's where we're having a lot of issues and where things are going. And you got to remember as well, so if we also now move forward, and the Sun-Uranus aspect is not easy because Uranus, you know, forces us to go higher. It forces us to reach higher in our life. But on April 20th, what happens? Oh, the sun moves into Taurus. And this is a big deal because remember, this is where Uranus is going to enter, right? Venus is here, so the sun and Venus now are back in the same sign. And now it's in Taurus, the sign of, it's a fixed sign. It's a sign of earth. It's a sign of manifesting. And it's the strongest sign that has to deal with your fixation on values and wants. Just like Scorpio, but these are actually physical, right? Physical. Like, do you like, you know, it's kind of basic, but it's like, do you like Nike or Reebok? You know, Taurus, no, like Taurus knows. I want Reebok or I want Nike. It's like, do you like Apple or Samsung? Or LG, you know, like, but usually with Taurus, you know, it usually likes one of the bigger two, you know, it like usually, you know, doesn't like one of the third or the fourth brands off. I'm just being honest with you, you know, like it feels too off, like, you know. So now that the sun comes into Taurus this week, after it's just been through Uranus, after all these big shits going on in this identity storm and our path and which one's right, and are we going to wear this shitty jacket? Are we going to wear this mask anymore? Does it really reflect who we are inside? Guess what? This is a whole new world for us. It's a whole new world, and now with the sun in Taurus, it's like it's going to start physically manifesting. This is the sign that physically manifests it. It tests whether or not you're truly feeling valuable in it, or if it is worth it. Is it worth holding on to these things in our life? And it's at the same time that I think is interesting that when you look at this sun coming into Taurus, it's at the same time that we've got Venus, which is coming up on the star Algol at 26 degrees. And I think what it is, you know, there's a part of ourselves where it's like we cannot deny what we want in our lives anymore. Like, we cannot deny what our true nature is of what we like. Like, it's hard because I think what we're doing is we've got to fight for what we really want in our life with ourselves. And we have to go through our own inner battles of whether or not we are going to make some of the hardest decisions in our life. If you think that Saturn retrograde is easy just because it goes offline, yes, I think it takes off a lot of the problems that continue to mount in your life. But the problems that have mounted up, you've got to deal with now. So it's like, there's a lot of things to deal with and get done. But all the things that you've been feeling for months and weeks that have finally reached to this point today, where finally you feel a relief because there's, you know, the greatness of all this Venus and Moon and Taurus and all this stuff. So it feels all like, oh, maybe everything's going to be great. The truth is the week goes by. Oh, wait, no, wait, this is who I really am and what I really want. And okay, whoa, Saturn retrograde's going to start retrograding over all this shit that's really having to deal with who I really am as far as my wants go, my desires, the physical world, how it physically is going to look. Everything's moving physical. Everything's moving in color and painting and life and who we are. So don't let the beginning of this week, and especially Tuesday and Wednesday, kind of fool you. Because as we move on, you know, the moon's going to come into Cancer and square Chiron now. So start getting used to this moon and Cancer stuff. Every time the moon's going to come into Cancer now for the next, you know, like months, it's going to square Chiron now. So it's going to feel that wound of emotionally unsatisfied with our identity, not comfortable with maybe who we're trying to be. Uncomfortable identities. Uncomfortable people. Not outer people in our life, ourselves. It's like we're going to look in the mirror this week and go, why am I living an uncomfortable personal self? Why? Why in the hell am I doing it? Why am I choosing to put myself through uncomfort? More than that, why am I choosing to be something I'm not comfortable really with fully? And maybe it's really uncomfortable, or it could be the other part of Cancer where it's just like, I'm just doing this because it's safe, but really I don't want to do it, but it's safe to stay here, but it doesn't feel right to stay safe. And when you add this up to Neptune, which, of course, if we look at the chart here, Neptune's halfway through Pisces, do you really want to just stay there and get stuck into a place that's emotionally uncomfortable for yourself? Look at this, the moon too, right? It's going to square Mercury. Lots of questions. So Friday, the end of this week, when the sun comes into Taurus, it is a lot of questions about what we feel comfortable with and who we are, and more importantly, whether or not that self that we have projected ourselves to be is really what makes us feel good. And are we really somebody or something that doesn't really make us feel like we are who we want to be? You know, it's a hard one. It's not an easy one at all. It's a very hard one because These are questions of self at such a high degree with all the Uranus energy now, because Uranus is coming to those final degrees of Aries here, the 29th degree, right? It's getting close. Now, if we move to this weekend, the last chart, you're not going to believe it. It's just like, I can't believe it. So, on Sunday, April 22nd, look what happens. Pluto goes retrograde. Pluto retrogrades are where we have had it. We are at the end of our ropes. We know exactly what we want in our life. We've been building up and building up slowly. Remember, Pluto takes 6 months to go through its direct motion and then retrograde, right? So now we got to go through 6 months of a retrograde. But it's been 6 months that we have been moving forward with Pluto, and it's been digging the layers deeper of the path we want, of our deeper desires, and what's the path we really want in our life. And when it comes retrograde, combined in the same week that Saturn is retrograding in the same sign, you got to remember, we haven't seen this since the 1980s, okay? We have not seen Pluto and Saturn retrograde in the same sign since the early 80s, since it happened in Libra and since it happened in Scorpio. But when it happened in Libra, it was in a tighter conjunction. When it was in Scorpio, Saturn was ahead of Pluto and had already made its conjunction. This is the pre-conjunction. This is the gestation period of Pluto and Saturn conjunction coming, which is coming in the next year and a half, which is major because these two retrogrades start to show us by the end of this week with Chiron and Aries now. The moon stuff I talked about with in Cancer, but how ironic, if we look at the chart, the moon will motherfucking square in Leo, the sun, at the exact same time. Pressure about our true wants and needs. Leo is a need of heart. Taurus is a need of having. And these two are very Venus-Sun aspects, which of course the Venus and Sun are in Taurus. So to have the sun square the moon in this sign is love at its highest degree and its best, the best of the best of the best or not. And when you have Pluto and Saturn, which both are very deep signs dealing with desires and wants and achievements and getting deeper into what we want, and they're both retrograding in Capricorn going, holy shit, what needs to change on the path? What track's going to get us to what is going to feel good in our life? I'm telling you, don't let the feelings at the beginning of this week fool you. Because by the end of this week, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What is going on? This is what I really want in my life. Am I going to do it? Taurus does not fuck around, and Uranus is ready to come into Taurus in less than a month. You can feel it. My wants, my needs. When you combine from Uranus moving to the last degrees of Aries coming into Taurus, it's about desire of self and the life you want. And with Saturn and Pluto retrograding, it's sick and tired, literally, of not getting it. And it's time to fucking figure a way out to get it. Whether that's a hard situation, a hard choice, or putting an end to things. It's not easy. The good news, though, the universe is not going to pile more on top of you by the end of this week of what you want and what you don't want, or challenges that you need to figure out. Like, you're maxed out, okay? You're maxed out. There's not much more for God to throw on top of you to figure out here. But this week is the beginning of, oh, yeah, I do need to figure that out. Oh, yeah, I do need to be honest with those things. I do need to make those choices. You know, it's not easy. It's not simple at all. This isn't a soul question anymore, as much as it is a personal question. Now, we can relate soul and personal together, I guess. But there's something mystical about the soul that feels like it's got its predetermined course, its predetermined understanding, and its never-lasting stability of who you are inside. That never changes. But in the world that we play in, the virtual reality game we call Earth and Life, we do get to change the characters of ourselves, of the people we are in love with, the people that we share our lives with, the things that we do, the clothes we wear, the way that we style ourselves, the way that we get to play around in this world. And it's time for those things to be where we fix things. And it's going to bring up, because it's a week with Saturn and Pluto retrograde, in between that is Mars. Let's look at the chart one more time. I mean, it's like, in between that is motherfucking Mars. I mean, it's like, you cannot escape the deep-rooted changes that you need to make in your life. Next week, Mars conjuncts Pluto. Talk about forced endings. Forced. Gnarly shit. I really think that it's a blessing that the sun's coming into Taurus, because Taurus just, if the room stinks, it leaves. Aries is like, well, I'm here and I want to be here, so I'm here. But in Taurus we go, it stinks. I do want to be here, but it's not, it stinks, I don't want to be here, I'm out. So Aries kind of puts up with shit just to be there because it wants to be there. And it's because that's the character, right? So if you want to be an artist, it'll be like, well, it's the biggest art show in the world. I'm there. That's Aries, right? Taurus goes, might be the biggest art show in the world, but it's a piece of fucking shit art show. There's fucking a bunch of people here fucking that are using their own fucking poop to make art. It stinks. I'm out of here. I don't care if it's the biggest art show in the world. I'm out. It sucks. The value here is not enough. And so I think that this sun in Taurus is going to start to help us go, yeah, don't feel it, don't want to do this, don't want to be here, don't like that. That's not valuable enough. And Venus is still in Taurus through this whole week. Don't waste this. Mercury's out of retrograde too, so it's seen a lot. Like you're starting to look forward now. This is a week where you're going to have the courage to be honest with not only your deeper feelings, but honest with what you want in your life. And whether or not you're going to make it look that way, or if you're too afraid to do what's necessary to make the changes in your goals, your career, your life, your ambitions, your goals, your plans, to go there. There is a lot of unpredictability in this week. Uranus is there, so don't be fooled 1 second by this very rare conjunction of the moon and Venus and Taurus while it's trining Pluto and opposing Jupiter. That's extremely rare. And it's a feel-good energy, and it wants to divulge in feeling good, but it can make even the shittiest of situations feel good. Yeah, I just said that. That shit wears off quick this week, you know? As an astrologer, you can see this shit, you know? You're like, oh, okay. Because you probably wonder, you know, and I think God did that in a way because I think the Saturn retrograde in and have you noticed I've been saying Saturn and Scorpio and then Sag, now it's a Capricorn. The Saturn and Capricorn shit's no joke. It's rough. It's sandpaper, you know? Going backwards, going against the grain. It's like when you shave, you know. It's got to go back and deal with, you know, how can we make things better? There's frustrations. There's a relief too of frustrations because we're not getting added on new frustrations, but there's the frustrations that we have to deal with that have been existing, that need to be done with, that have been laid down in the tracks of karma. As remember, all the planets were direct at the beginning of this year. So it's like, oh my gosh, the whole year we just laid down a bunch of shit. Now all the planets are starting to retrograde to go over it and go, okay, let's deal with this shit now. I know identity issues are not easy to deal with. I know falling into your ego is a very slippery slope, especially being a spiritual person, right? It's not easy because ego is the fastest and easiest way to get off course, which is why Saturn does not like being in Aries. But it's necessary, and why Aries is before Capricorn is because we do need the ego to know what we want. If you're still looking out the window and you look at things and go, I want that, I don't have it in my life because I'm settling, those are the areas that you need to change. It's like you can have it, but with Chiron now in Aries, you become weak. Oh, no, I shouldn't do that, or I can't do that. I can't do that. Why? I don't know, I just can't. This is a week where you are going to start creating your own victimized role of why you can't have what you want. Anyway, I'm going to be on tour. It's coming up really soon. We're selling tickets, leokingevents.com. Future Life's going great. You can get readings now. Go to futurelife.tv, click on, and it's on the website, not the app. And remember, Future Life is not an app. Yes, it's an app to where you can have access and watch the videos. It's a website with all the videos and the practitioners. If you want to join, go to futurelife.tv on your phone even. If you, like, people are so obsessed thinking it's an app. It's really a website, and there's an app to watch the videos on that's pretty handy and nice on Apple. But the truth is, if you have an Android, go to the mobile, futurelife.tv. Watch your videos every day. Check it out now, $5.99 for a 7-day free trial. And High Vibe, we're getting that almost done here. Been working on that all day, actually. Getting those apps out in the next 2 to 4 weeks. Anyway, thanks for all the support. I truly appreciate it. Hope this helped. I know it's a hard one. No, it's not an easy one. But I know deep down in my heart that you can do it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys in the next Deeper Astrology. Please share. Truly appreciate it.